You are on air now.
Hello, hi, this is Ron Sandak. I'm going to wait a little bit for additional people to join the call, but you are on my Teletown Hall call concerning state education funding, specifically Senate Bill 16. I'll do a little more elaborative welcome in just a minute, but thank you for being on the call. Hang on just a second so we can talk about a pretty important issue to everyone in the 81st District and, frankly, the whole state of Illinois. So just bear with me one more minute, please. To those just joining, this is State Representative Ron Sandak. The call for participation in the Teletown Hall meeting is being made now. People are being connected as I speak. Please hang tight for just a minute before I start the call, and I will get to the issue at hand and obviously entertain any and all calls, questions, and concerns about Senate Bill 16 and the state aid formula potential change for funding education in our state. All right, again, for those just joining the call, welcome. I'm going to wait 30 more seconds and then we'll start. This is State Representative Ron Sandak. The call welcoming people to participate in this Teletown Hall is being made right now, so we have people joining as I speak. I want to make sure as many people can get on the call, listen in, and, of course, participate. You're going to hear me frequently say at any time, questions at any time, press 0. Press 0 to get in the queue to ask a question. And I will get to as many questions as humanly possible today. I understand the issue of education funding is a passionate one for many people, including me, and I know lots of people have opinions, which I want to hear. At the same time, I want to make sure we get to as many questions as possible. So if you have a question at any time, dial 0, and you'll be in the line to ask your question. All right, I'm going to start now. Some folks may have heard this before. Let me again welcome everyone to this Teletown Hall meeting. My name is State Representative Ron Sandak. Thank you for taking the time this evening out of your busy evening to participate in this call. I know some people like to participate actively. If you do wish to ask a question, press 0 at any time and we'll get you in the queue to ask a question. Others may only want to listen in for some or all of this call. Obviously, thank you for your participation in that way. All right, so let me make a couple of housekeeping comments first. As the call probably said, you should know that there is no state money being utilized for this call. The Citizens to Elect Ron Sandak campaign is paying for this call, so no state dollars are being used to hold this town hall meeting. Second, and this is probably the most important little ground rule, I have 3 wonderful volunteers screening and taking calls. They're volunteers. They're not paid. One's my wife. These are good people. They're going to do the best they can to handle calls as they come in and get you in line, and I'll answer as many questions as possible. If your call is dropped, please blame me. Don't blame them. They're good people and they're trying the best. But any call that's dropped will obviously be an accident. Please call back. And if you're on Facebook or Twitter, you know the call-in number. It's all over my Facebook or Twitter account. I'll say it from time to time because there's a call-in and a password. I'll get you that in a second. All right, last kind of housekeeping comment, and I'm going to repeat this. Education funding in the state of Illinois is complex. Unfortunately, it's ridiculously complex and far too complex. So reform of funding and overall education reform is absolutely a fair question that should be contemplated in a fair environment with all stakeholders. For today's call, here's what everyone needs to know, and this is the important thing. Essentially, and very basically, there are 2 components to funding education in the state of Illinois. 2 main components. One is local property taxes. Everyone knows the local property taxes they pay primarily goes to fund schools, public schools in their district. The other portion that's frankly relevant today is the state aid formula. That's the state's component, the state's portion of funding public education in the state of Illinois. What I'm talking about today, primarily, overwhelmingly, has to do with the state aid formula, the state formula for education funding. That comes out of not property taxes, but state income taxes, state sales taxes, other state revenues. And it's distributed pursuant to, again, a complex formula to all the public schools in the state. And I'll remind you, we're not talking property tax components here. No one's talking about shifting property tax, local property tax dollars to anywhere else in the state. As I said earlier, public education funding is a passionate topic. It's important. Many of us live in the communities we choose to live in because there's good schools there, and that's fair game. You may have heard recently that there's a bill, SB 16. SB 16, it stands for Senate Bill 16, that came out of the Senate in the last session. It passed. That bill by Senator Andy Manar from Bunker Hill, Illinois, down in central Illinois, seeks to change the state aid formula pretty dramatically. Senator Manar's motives are absolutely pure. I know Andy. He is a good person with good intentions. He sees inequity in the overall school funding system. He thinks there are necessary improvements that need to be made, and in so doing, he offered and got passed out of the Senate, Senate Bill 16, which dramatically changes the formula for funding state education out of state revenue dollars, not local property taxes. Essentially, it takes a majority of the sums, in some instances as much as 75% of the sums, from the local schools and distributes it throughout the state, out of the suburbs, out of DuPage County, to central, southern Illinois, and beyond. I'll get you kind of the list of what this could cost the schools in the House District 81, and know this for right now. The sum total of the state loss of dollars, if Senate Bill 16 is implemented, would be about $140 million to the schools in DuPage County annually. $140 million in revenue loss to DuPage schools, which would cause some serious disruption of services, arguably devastate the schools, and or cause catastrophic changes to the way the schools undertake its education process. I'm going to stop here and remind people at any time, if you want to ask a question, press 0. Press 0 at any time to ask a question. I occasionally throughout this call will offer a poll call so that anyone that's listening in only needs to listen in and press a button on their telephone to register their answer. Actually, I've just been corrected. It's an email question, so I apologize. And I'll get to the question in a minute. So back to Senate Bill 16. Little background. It was passed in the waning days of the last session, late in May. And the bill came up for a vote at a time when many thought there would be no vote on it. And it passed. It passed largely on a partisan roll call, but on a geographical roll call as well. There was one senator in the Senate from a Republican district that voted for it. Otherwise, the rest of the votes were straight Democrats. I should mention, this is not a partisan comment, but simply a fact, Senator Manar is a Democrat. He has been spending the rest of the summer. The bill was not called in the House, by the way. So while it's out of the Senate, everyone on this call knows it requires that it pass both chambers and then get sent to the governor before a bill becomes a law. So it's only 1/3 of the way through the process. But that's not necessarily a hindrance. It's a significant hurdle already negotiated successfully. So the bill was not called in the House. However, there have been a number of meetings. Senator Manar has been up and down the state on a little bit of a roadshow, meeting with mostly, in fact, I think exclusively Democratic House and or Senate members, and doing a presentation of why he believes SB 16 is a good idea. And to that extent, there have been stakeholder conversations with advocates for school funding, for school education, for children, to better our children's education, north, south, east, and west. Those stakeholder meetings have been entirely partisan because no Republicans have gone to these meetings because they haven't been invited. So the process I became aware of the process a couple weeks ago of these secret meetings, because in politics, secrets only last so long. And it actually became a story in a couple of newspapers and in Crain's that these meetings were happening, and the suggestion was that there was deal cutting to be made with Chicago representatives. The idea of finding a way so that this bill, Senate Bill 16, helps Chicago Public Schools and the city of Chicago, and maybe garner enough votes to go around any Republican protests and opposition, is something that concerns me. Last week, I had a telephone conversation with a school superintendent who had been invited to a meeting with some school advocates, and this school superintendent was one of a few superintendents that were losers under SB 16, and there were winning districts represented by superintendents at this meeting as well. At this meeting, it was suggested that the folks in the losing districts, which comprises the entirety of the 81st District, and all of DuPage County save one school system, the idea was and suggestion was to work with Andy Manar and the advocates of this bill, try and make it less difficult, and maybe then, swallow this jagged little pill and we'll move on. Thankfully, no one's taken that invitation just yet, and so far, I know of no one taking the bait on that. So here's a little numbers for you to let you know kind of the devastating effects of SB 16 locally. In School District 58, which is Downers Grove, elementary through middle school district, approximately $2 million a year will be lost in state aid funding. That is nothing short of significant. I was at a breakfast meeting this morning with Naperville, District 200, 203, and 204, and 200 loses 82% of its state revenue, a loss of $9.8 million annually. District 203 loses 76% of its state revenue, $9.4 million annually. District 204 loses 41% of its state revenue, a loss of $10.1 million annually. District 99 loses, I think it's 76% of its revenue, which is over $3 million in annual state aid formula funding. This equals teacher loss and or reduction in services, extracurricular or otherwise. That's not insignificant. The fact of the matter is, this bill in its entirety can be easily summed up as follows. There is no new money to fund education in Senate Bill 16. It is essentially a reallocation of existing state revenue from the suburbs into the central and southern parts of the state of Illinois and potentially into the city of Chicago. That concerns me. I've heard from many people that say, hey, shouldn't we try and help other areas of the state that have school difficulties, that have lesser schools than us? To me, that's a laudable goal, and we should help our brethren. But we shouldn't take now underfunded schools and give money to terribly underfunded schools. That's a transfer that really is a net of nothing, or a net loss, frankly. The idea of transferring money from the suburbs out to other areas of the state simply because we can is avoiding the overall problem. So Senate Bill 16 is starting to get legs because of these meetings and because of the potential of deal making. I'll get into that in a second. In response to this, because it's starting to get a little bit of legs, I sponsored House Resolution 1276, which denounces the bill, which says education reform is absolutely a good thing. Seeking to reform education funding is absolutely a good thing, laudable. But doing it in the setting they're doing it right now is not laudable, but actually harmful. And I think it's fundamentally unfair for the state of Illinois to simply transfer dollars from one part of the state to the other part of the state. It's just not good reform, it's not good funding, and it is bad policy, frankly. So the idea of funding schools and having a discussion about how we fund schools and making sure those that need it most are dealt with first. Fair game. Doing it in a lame duck session, which is coming up soon in January, or in a veto session, which is coming up in November, where backroom deals and secret meetings are occurring, is fundamentally unfair. And it inures to the benefit of everyone but those in the western, northern, southern, and suburbs, the Collar counties of the greater Chicagoland area. So with that in mind, I brought House Resolution 1276, seeking to raise awareness and engage taxpayers, parents, concerned citizens, education reform advocates, and those passionate about education and how we fund education to stop this harmful bill because it will hurt our local schools, and then take a time out and have a legitimate conversation in a different venue so that all stakeholders and all concerned taxpayers, parents, guardians, education advocates, and those passionate about fair and far more equitable education funding can get together and have a dialogue outside of Springfield, outside of smoky back rooms and deal making, unattached to some of the rather unseemly aspects of partisan politics. I earlier reminded people that if you had a question to call to press 0, you can do that. I want to take a moment now and let you know there were some questions that were emailed in by some people that are not on the line right now. The first question is, why can't we get rid of long-term legislators? Which is an interesting question, not totally on point, but certainly a relevant conversation piece for SB 16 or any piece of contentious legislation. Why can't we get rid of long-term legislators? Some will tell you we can. They're called elections. Others will say those are entrenched incumbents, completely impervious to the regular election cycle and process. As a reminder, I brought a bill 3 years ago, for term limits. It went nowhere. I don't have optimism that it will go anywhere soon. However, I will bring it again in the next legislative session and try and get more support. So to the questioner about why can't we get rid of long-term legislators, unfortunately right now we're confined to the electoral process only. That's it. As so far as SB 16 is concerned, I will note that Senator Menard, the principal sponsor in the Senate, and the gentleman that's passionate about his bill, is a new state senator, very new. So for whatever that's worth. Next, there was another question from another person who could not be on this call. Why should DuPage give up $140 million? For me, that's an easy question. We shouldn't. Those dollars go to our schools now, and those dollars are sent to our schools through a system that exists now. Is it a perfect system? Absolutely not. Is it a system that we should be talking about, reforming in whole or in part? Fair conversation. But right now, the way SB 16 is situated, DuPage County would lose $140 million in state aid to education that goes to our public schools right now. That $140 million would be redistributed to other areas of the state, north and south, east and west, and it would cause significant changes. For instance, District 203 said the loss in state aid revenue, which would equalize about $9.4 million a year, equals 120 teachers. That would be the 6th largest reduction in the state of Illinois. It would be the 3rd largest reduction in DuPage County. By any manner of definition of material, that is a materially harmful potential change to School District 203. So too with every school district in 81. I want people to know that I've had a series of ongoing conversations with every school superintendent or their representative since the end of the last session. When the bill came out of committee, we had a conference call, and I made the superintendents and their staff aware of the existence of the bill. Those good people did their educating and found out what the bill did to them. After the bill got to the floor and came out of the Senate, we had another conference call. We were concerned that it was going to come to the House. Fortunately, it did not, so there was no vote taken. Last week, when this bill started getting new legs with new potential backroom deals being made and new sponsors and or people interested in talking about the bill, I had another conversation with the school superintendents in my district, and they're motivated. Many of them have sent emails to parents, guardians, and interested people about the harmful effects SB 16 does to their school district. I think if you go to District 99 and District 58 for certain on their websites, you'll see messages from their superintendents. I think that's also the case with every school district in the 81st district. I know the other school districts are intending to do informational email blasts to their constituents and stakeholders so that more people know about SB 16. All right, I'm going to take a couple calls here. So I'm going to try Wally. I don't know if you're on. Wally, are you on?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Wally. That was operator error for a second. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for addressing this very obviously concerning issue. The question being, if the vote were taken today, there are certain counties and their school districts that will be losing money.
I think there are a couple school districts in Collier counties that lose money. I have been focusing on DuPage, Wally. There is, in the county of DuPage, there is only one school district that's a loser. The rest are a winner, pardon me. Let me retract and rephrase. There's only one school district in DuPage County that comes out winning under SB 16. The entirety of the remaining school districts are losers. Some are massive losers.
Understood, and you obviously represent the Collier counties or this district in northern Illinois.
Yes.
This being a statewide issue, if a vote were taken today in the various school districts that were gaining funds versus losing funds, is DuPage County and the surrounding area the only loser? And if other loser, how would the vote go today?
McHenry's a loser in large part. Lake is a loser almost exclusively, but in large part. Kane is mostly a loser. I think even Kendall. And I think Will County with a couple of exceptions. So, again, taking that in a kind of a macro way, the Collier counties are resounding losers under SB 16.
Okay, but breaking it down into representative districts and going with southern Illinois and mid-Illinois, how would the vote go if they were all going to go by winning and losing from the school district aspect?
I don't know. Wally, good question. From my part, and I've learned this in my short tenure in the General Assembly, reading tea leaves is impossible to do. Right now, I put up House Resolution 1276 for the distinct purpose of trying to garner opposition. And so far, I think it's 16 Republicans and 1 Democrat, all from the suburbs. So my effort to mount an opposition is gaining some steam, but counting heads right now is impossible because the bill in its current form is largely unacceptable to most. But, as I alluded to earlier, there are conversations mostly with Democrats in the city of Chicago about gaining votes. That's how the vote passes. You work around the Collier counties and you get the largest voting constituency in the House, which comes out of those who represent in whole or in part the city of Chicago. And I'll get to it in a little bit, but right now, too early to tell the vote tally. And the good news is, well, we don't have to vote until November, so that gives me time to do my thing. It gives people time on this call to talk to their neighbors, friends throughout the state. But let me make sure I'm clear on something here too, everybody. I understand what Senator Menard is doing. His intentions are absolutely good. He sees inequity in the system, and he's trying to, address it. I think he's doing it in a way that's harmful to my constituency, and I don't think it really helps in the overall scheme of things, his. I think it just redistributes and reallocates dollars rather than addressing the fundamental problem of holistic education funding. Wally, thank you for your call. I'm gonna take another one. Linda, are you there? Linda. How about it? Linda.
Thank you.
How are you?
I am peachy keen and all that jazz. Thank you. How about you?
I'm good. Thank you for calling.
Okay. I want to thank you for doing your resolution 1276, but could you be, I didn't hear much of what was going on. I came in at the end of this. So tell me what your resolution is, 1276.
Yes, great question, Linda. The resolution, I'll be completely blunt, is largely symbolic. A resolution is just that. It's a pronouncement. You know, we usually do resolutions congratulating someone or advocating for some position. This resolution asks for opposition against SB 16. It says in sum and substance, Linda, we understand that there needs to be a conversation about education funding, a holistic, inclusive conversation with all stakeholders at the table with their concerns legitimately discussed and debated. We understand that there is some inequities in the system right now. However, the bill, as presented in its current form, does horrible things to many in the state of Illinois, the 81st District particularly included, because every school district in my district, every school district in the 81st District that I represent, Linda, gets hurt bad by this bill. And my resolution seeks to mount polite opposition to the bill and offer a calm, methodical opportunity for discussing educational funding problems and education reform, or any topic about how we educate every student in the state of Illinois, but to do so in a different manner, in a different way. It's far more inclusive and far more accountable and open. So that's what the resolution really says.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. I appreciate your call very much. All right, I'm going to go on to John. Hang on, John. John, are you there? One more time. I'm really not that good at operating this system. I hope everyone's patient. John? Uh-oh. Yeah, I think you're on a cell phone. Yeah, you are. Can you call back? Because that's not going to work, my friend. Call back, please. Thank you. Abigail, you're in the queue. Abigail.
Hi, Ron. It's actually not Abigail. She is my daughter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. She lives in West Virginia, so you might.
Oh, who am I talking to? Help me out.
This is Liz. So
hi, Liz. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Nice to hear your voice.
Yeah.
What can I help you with, or what can you help me with on this bill?
Well, actually, Ron, was just calling you to say thank you for getting this out to the public. As a child advocate who has been intimately involved in the school board for many, many years, just to thank you for getting this out to the public so people are informed. And I know that's really the most important thing, is to make sure right now people are informed of the impact that could potentially happen, because certainly many of the school districts in DuPage County cannot take this hit. And yes, we need to find some equity within funding public education, but we certainly in our counties cannot afford to do this. So thank you. That's all I really wanted to say, was thank you for taking the time to put this together, Ron. Thank you for getting the information out there. Thank you for making sure people are informed so that they can make an educated decision and to contact people. And so I
well, thank you for the thank you. So let me throw one at you and a humble suggestion. Obviously, thank you for your service as a school board member over the many years. And please, to the extent your network of friends, family, the people you interact with, et cetera, the call to action on this, in my humble opinion, is getting as many informed people. And it's sometimes over the fence of a neighbor, sometimes it's at the grocery store, at the library. People like you who have intimate knowledge of the complexities of state aid formula and the difficulties of making ends meet as it is, and someone that understands how bad it would hurt to have 75% of the state aid formula cut, please continue to stay involved and be active, because yours is a reasoned and obviously knowledgeable voice. So please do that.
I will do so. But again, thank you, Ron, for hosting this tonight. I'm sure many other people will find it helpful just to get that information and to have a non-partial, really, you're just putting information out there so people can become informed as to the impact it would have in their community. And as we know, schools are so important in all of our communities, whether it be Naperville, Hinsdale, wherever they might be. They really are the foundation of a solid community. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the call. Take care.
You too. Bye.
All right, I'm going to try and hook up Debbie here. Debbie, are you there?
Hello?
Debbie.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. I also want to say thank you, and I do agree that this is a very important conversation, but like you're saying, there are considerable red flags within the bill, both in terms of the amount of losses, and then the reality is if you break down the bill, it's actually pulling a lot of funding away from schools that have the highest number of at-risk students, just because they're near Chicago, and they also have higher property value because of that. I do agree with you completely that the awareness campaign is super important, and we are also doing a citizens, I'm a parent, but we also started a statewide awareness campaign from EDGE, Illinois. So we have a website up, a Facebook group up, and then also a Twitter account.
Oh, go ahead and plug it right here. You got the floor. So give me, put it out there for your Facebook, Twitter, and your website.
Yeah, so it's you can get to the Facebook or to the website a few different ways. You can get through it through EDGE, Illinois, EDGE, EDGE, for Everyone Deserves a Great Education, or the shortcut is sb16.org. And then the Facebook page is linked off of the website, but it is also EDGE, Illinois. And then the Twitter account is SB16 Red Flags. And again, we agree completely that things need to change, but the way the bill is currently written, it will devastate a lot of schools for a lot of different reasons.
Excellent. And, thank you, Debbie, very much. Appreciate your advocacy and the awareness campaign your group is bringing to bear on this issue. Take care much.
Thank you.
I should have said this earlier, and Debbie's kind of call to action on her advocacy reminded me. There is a website right now that people can absolutely take advantage of and afford an opportunity to read everything. The Illinois State Board of Education has on its website right now a section dedicated to SB 16. So if you go to www.isb.net, that's www.isb.net, you will see a world of information on SB 16. Probably too much, but they err on the side of putting it out there, which is great. It is a technical look at the bill. It compares what goes on right now to what would happen if SB 16 became the law of the land. So, again, www.isbe.net, a really good source of information. And if you want to know kind of the horse race and the components of who voted for this bill out of the Senate, you can go to www.ilga.gov, G-O-V. That's www.ilga.gov, G-O-V, which is the Illinois General Assembly's website, has every bill that the Senate and or House has taken up or just filed. And if you go to bills or resolutions, you'll see SB 16, and then you'll see H.R. 1276, which is my resolution, seeking to combat SB 16. All right, I'm going to try and put Molly on because she's been waiting patiently. Molly, are you there?
Hi, I am Representative Sandek. Nice
Hi.
to meet you. Hi.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for doing this tonight. And I have a two-pronged question. One was basically, and it's been covered a little bit with the last few questions, but just as resident, I'm in Downers Grove. What we're able to do leading up to this in November to help, is it just bringing awareness at this point? I mean, the only things that I've seen so far are either social media pushes on it. I've seen a few petitions, but is there anything as just residents that we're able to do to protest it more or, respond to it besides emailing representatives?
Well, that's part of it. Really good question, Molly. So the whole purpose of this call was really a call to action. And as an earlier caller said, Liz, it's really an awareness campaign that I'm starting to try and generate. Others are doing this as well. I'm hoping other representatives, senators, stakeholders, advocates will mesh and coalesce. And again, I want to make sure I'm really clear on this because my friend Andy Menard may be listening right now. He's a good man. His bill is well-intended. The conversation about education reform and or education funding reform is a fair one. However, I don't like his bill. It harms my district, my constituents, in a really significant manner. It's a material change in the way schools are funded, and it will materially harm all the schools in the 81st District and most, if not all, the schools in DuPage County and beyond. So what I humbly suggest is I've got on my website, my legislative website, which is www.ronsandak.org. You'll see I have an open letter to my colleagues. I wrote a letter to every colleague of mine in the House that represents a district that is a loser under SB 16. And I politely say, you should be with me, sign on to my resolution, H.R. 1276, and let's mount a polite counter opposition to SB 16 and invite our friends on the other side of this issue to a far more civil conversation in a different venue whatsoever. Someone alluded to it earlier, Molly, and what I'm afraid of is with November coming up, it's a veto session, and some legislators will be leaving. And then worse, and so that requires a 3/5 majority. But here's what happens in January, right before the 99th General Assembly is seated. It's a lame duck session, and it only requires a simple majority. So if Senator Menard and the House sponsors can garner 60 votes by hook or crook, they can run that out of the House at midnight before the next General Assembly is seated. I saw that happen in 2011. It's a bad way to pass any type of legislation, much less reform legislation. It leaves a distinctly sour taste in good governing advocates' mouths. And the citizens' taste for good government it's stained, and it's hurt irreparably. So you talking to your friends, your neighbors, passing along, if you go to, again, my legislative website, www.ronsandak.org, you'll see my resolution, you'll see my open letter to my colleagues. Pass it along. You'll also see, if you go to www.ilga.gov and you punch in H.R. 1276, you'll see every representative that's with me so far, and you'll see a lot that should be with me. Contacting those that should be with me and putting polite citizen pressure on them is, a time-honored American tradition of participation. So I'm hoping others get involved and ginned up on this issue and understand it's really important. Thank you.
Okay.
You have one more. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Molly.
My question is the domino effect of this, if it passes, that property taxes would then go up to account for the loss of money to the school system? I mean, it's sort of a hypothetical, but...
It is a hypothetical, but it's a real hypothetical. The two choices are, I don't know what school district you're in, but if you're in 99 or 58 or 203 or 61, 68, millions of dollars will be diverted and taken away from them. So the choices are operate without millions of dollars or try and get it out of the property tax. So the school board is going to have a discussion, and they may say, we choose to continue to fund, to provide our service unabated by the loss of state revenue, so we're going to ask our local citizens. So the answer is, that's a very real possibility. And I want to be clear on this. In the 81st District and beyond, we pay a lot in property taxes right now. As we speak, right now we pay a lot. Our state pays the second highest amount of property tax in the country. DuPage County is one of the top 3 in the state. So that means it's one of the top counties in the country as far as property taxes right now. The idea of a property tax increase is hurtful, is so hurtful, just devastating to many families, seniors particularly. So, obviously that's one of the motivating factors I have in opposing SB 16. I don't want that outcome at all. Molly, thank you for your call very much. I appreciate it. I'm going to try and take a couple more calls. There's been a lot of people in the line for a while, so let me make sure I try and get this who's been for a while. Michael, are you there?
Hi, Ron. I'm Mike. I teach in District 99. And first of all, I want to thank you for standing up against Senate Bill 16. I also have students in 58, my own children in 58 and 99. So I appreciate you standing up against Senate Bill 16. My question is, Ron, I don't know if taxpayers realize, I've been at 5 different school districts over my 23 years, and District 99 has, and I don't know as much about 58, has done very well to manage the financial storms we've gone through. They're not frugal with their money. They get money through to kids, and it's not wasted or stolen from the taxpayers. And I think they do a great job of educating the kids. My question is, do the taxpayers know, and are you aware of, this was one of the largest classes to come in, at least to North High School this year, freshmen in a decade, and the burden that we're under right now in terms of the size of classes and the burden that are put on teachers for that. What would this do to that? Like, what would you see happening if this Senate Bill 16 were to pass? What impact?
Really good question. I will confess that I have 2 children at North, and so I'm a fan of all the schools in my district, and one of the things that's really heartening about being a state representative in the 81st District, our public schools are excellent. We have some really thoughtful leaders, some outstanding teachers. The folks involved in educating our kids, by and large, are fabulous human beings, passionate educators, and passionate about educating children. So I did not know. Thank you for the information about the largesse of this year's incoming class at North High School. I suspect, though I don't know, maybe South High School is experiencing the same level of growth. That's encouraging in one respect, but yes, it's a challenge because, Michael, to your question, if SB 16 passes, we're talking about either it's going to be larger classrooms probably either way, but how large will depend on whether the board decides to try and raise property taxes and offset that loss, that palpable loss of state revenue. And I want to hesitate right now and offer something. Local property taxes are paid by local citizens to their local schools. State funding is every bit ours. So let me make sure everyone's aware. That's your income taxes, your sales taxes, and state fees that you pay as taxpayers to the state of Illinois, and it is a fundamental core service of the state to provide education to, its citizens and its youth. So the idea of redistributing that money, I think, would be devastatingly harmful to the schools in 81st. I suspect larger classrooms would be but one of the effects, negative effects at that would be visited upon our schools if this bill comes to fruition. So, Michael, I'm hoping you and others, your neighbors, friends, your colleagues, use this opportunity as a call to action to educate neighbors and friends and get them active in this, what I think is kind of an awareness campaign to push back on this bill and offer a sensible conversation about education funding holistically and potentially education reform, again, outside the venue of Springfield without kind of a gun at our head as it is right now. Thank you for your call, Mike.
Thank you.
As a reminder, folks, to those that are still on this call, thank you for being on this call. The idea is to raise awareness, implore action, first by way of self-educating. Again, the Illinois State Board of Education has a wonderful website, and on it a section dedicated to SB 16 that you can find it at www.isbe.net. You can also look at how the bill changed, and you can actually read the bill It is dense, thick reading to be sure. You can see it at www.ilga.gov. Simply hit the SB 16 tab, and you'll get the bill, the votes in the Senate, any proposed amendments, etc. And at any time, anyone wants to contact me, my legislative website is www.ronsandak.org. My campaign website is www.ron4illinois.com. You can call me at 630-442-0081. That is 630-442-0081. That is my campaign number, not my legislative number. You can call me. It is a busy number. Please know lots goes into voicemail, but you will be responded to. If you have a question, you can email me at www.ronsandak.org or ron4illinois@gmail.com. Sorry, it's getting late. ron4illinois@gmail.com. And I'm happy to entertain questions, concerns, and I'll get back to as many people as I can. I'm going to try one more call. Craig. Are you there, Craig?
Hey, Ron.
Hello, Craig.
Yes, I'm here.
Fire away.
I was just wondering, it seems like, with the way that the House and Senate are stacked against Republicans, that to avoid having our funding cut, that it might make sense to increase funding downstate. Is that on the table?
I think everything's on the table. Unfortunately, that is not a part of SB 16. And I should note, SB 16 is a result of a Senate-only conversation it was a task force on education funding. The House had no participants in that task force, and they utilized the Massachusetts model for basically trying to equalize state aid formula funding based on areas of poverty and economically disadvantaged areas. So the motive is absolutely good, but a particularly interesting variation of SB 16, to your point, Craig, is there's no new money in SB 16. It is simply reallocating or redistributing existing state aid dollars, frankly, out of the suburbs and into other areas of the state. The Massachusetts model, I think, included up to $1 billion extra in education funding, and so there were no losers like SB 16. So that was long-winded, I know. There is no part of SB 16 that includes new money.
Okay. It seems to me that that would take this effort by the Senate off the table, don't you think?
It should, but my short tenure in Springfield tells me that, here's what's going on. And I alluded to this earlier. This bill was dying in the Senate, and near the end of the session came out of nowhere, was kind of called quietly. It's a very busy time at the end of the year. Bills come at you fast and furious. This is a really big bill, and it kind of came on the floor almost by surprise, and it had the votes. I think it got 32 votes, all Democrats with one Republican in a district that would be a winner under the new formula. It was sent over to the House, but it was not called by the House, Craig, and it was held. And we've been out of session since, June. Since that time, Senator Menard, who's, again, a good man, has been running around the state advocating his bill and why he thinks it's a good partial reform and why he thinks it's fair and equitable. Where this gets interesting, and over the last couple of weeks particularly, and this is where this is getting legs, he's been meeting, and other advocates on his behalf and on behalf of the bill have been meeting with those in the city of Chicago. Many people on this phone and know that the city of Chicago has a horribly underfunded CPS pension fund, Chicago Public School Pension Fund. So there's some that speculate this new bill there could be some money to CPS to make up kind of the hole in their pensions. Maybe Chicago gets a pension holiday in exchange for a vote on this bill. There's others that say, you know this, there's a cost shift concept being discussed, shifting the normal or go-forward pension expense onto the school districts this may be coupled with that. Mike Madigan has made it clear that that is a legislative goal of his, and some, I think it's a little far-stretched, but there are some that advocate this attached to an income tax increase. People could go back to their district and say, oh, no, I didn't vote for an income tax increase. I voted to make sure our district wasn't hurt in school funding. All of that is, speculation, but the fact is these meetings are occurring. I know of attendees. They have come back and reported to me of what's being discussed. This alarms me that some type of deal is being cut. And if a deal is cut, it will be to the exclusion of DuPage County, to be certain. The collars as well, county collars as well. And we're going to be on the short end of the stick here. And that's why I'm trying to mount an awareness campaign and get people interested in learning more about all this to move on. Thank you for the call, Craig. I appreciate it much. I'm going to try. I said one more. I think I've got time for one more. Elizabeth. I like that name. I have a friend named Elizabeth. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi. You actually partially answered my question, I suppose. It was really a twofold question. I was in a meeting with Scott Kasich, principal over at Downers Grove North, and we discussed this a little bit, and he did, excuse me, he did allude to, the possibility of a rumor that Chicago would be exempt or that there was something going on. So I think you kind of addressed that.
Well, I'm happy to elaborate, Elizabeth. Right, as the bill in its current form does not help Chicago.
Right.
But the bill in its current form, I think Craig, the previous caller, kind of alluded to the math of the composition of the General Assembly. You got to have Chicago Democrats on a bill to pass it. They're the largest represented land mass and entity, and they have the most representatives because that's where the most people live in Chicago and in Cook County. So Andy Menard and the House advocates of SB 16 are speaking with Chicago Democrats to try and win their vote. They're only going to get votes from Chicago Democrats if it's something in it for Chicago. The mayor of Chicago desperately wants to alleviate some of the pension pressure on CPS and on him. So many speculate either there's money that goes right to the city for education that can be dumped into the pensions, and or, ironic to be sure, a pension holiday. And just so you know, Elizabeth, that's what's garnered my attention. I haven't been in Springfield long, but I've been able to pay attention to the fact that when something starts getting legs in the rumor mill that has Chicago Democrats interested, there's a grain of truth to it, and then you got to pay attention and be prepared. So I'm concerned that there will be something put in an amendment in SB 16 that benefits Chicago and Cook County, and all of a sudden there's real momentum to get SB 16 out the door in November or January, which would be really bad for our schools.
I'm sorry, I agree. As the bill stands right now, the redistribution of the funds would not benefit Chicago, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so you're thinking there's a change possibly.
Well, I know they're talking. I mean, that's exactly why, they're talking. This was put out in the papers and in Cranes that there are, and by the way, these meetings were invitation-only meetings, and no Republicans, no one from my side of the aisle were invited to the table. And, and even for those people that believe this is a good bill, that process is rotten. All stakeholders, everyone passionate about education, all taxpayers ought to be represented at the table if something fundamentally different is going to change in the way we distribute state aid to our public schools. It should not be an invitation-only type of process, but rather very inclusive, over-inclusive of anything. And unfortunately, it's exclusive, which is why I'm kind of, spearheading the opposition through H.R. 1276.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I want to thank everyone and to those that were still on the line, sorry that we had a queue there. Thank you. If you want to email me your question, that's Ron4, the number 4, Illinois, @gmail.com. Email me at ron4illinois@gmail.com or call me at 630-442-0081. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you for your efforts, hopefully, to tell your neighbors and friends that this is a big issue. I gave you my phone number, 630-442-0081, ron4illinois@gmail.com. My legislative email is ronsandak rep, Sandak @gmail.com. Please feel free to contact me at any time. And obviously, thank you for your attention, your goodwill, and hopefully we raise an awareness campaign so that the schools, our public schools, aren't dealt with unfairly and that are protected, and that later, in a different venue, in a different forum, a fair, open, honest, accountable, and inclusive process for education funding, equitable distribution of state funds, so that all students throughout the state are afforded a great education can occur. Thank you very much. Godspeed.